I did my current event on microorganisms in lettuce. My standard is SL5 or S5L4. Obtain, evaluate, and communicate information about how microorganisms benefit or harm larger organisms. I did a concentration on part B, construct an argument using scientific evidence to support a claim that some microorganisms are harmful. The standard gives a list of like the basic microorganisms that would be covered in between fourth and fifth grade, and the ones that are most common and that they will hear about the most. Lettuce is known for being a healthy and refreshing food, but lettuce is extremely hard to clean. Lettuce can come in contact with thousands of microorganisms at any time from harvest to meal because it is touched by so many people in the process. When it's taken and being packaged and being sent out to places like grocery stores and restaurants, it's being handled by a lot of people. It's getting put in packaging that's being handled by more people and more machines. It just touches a lot of hands and objects on the way from point A to point B. And since lettuce never gets, like in salads and stuff, or if you put it on a burger, it doesn't get cooked like everything else mostly. So it doesn't have the heat to take away the bacteria like everything else that you are normally consuming. And when you make lettuce, like you use lettuce to make salads and stuff, it's being put into people's hands and people are constantly touching it. And since lettuce is so leafy and it's got all the like curves in it and all the cracks, it's really hard to get in and to get everything out from those hidden places in this lettuce. One of my links was for the Center of Disease Control. Recently, on December 20th of 2020, the CDC was made aware of numerous E. coli cases. The CDC does a traceback investigation with any multiple outbreak occurrences, and the traceback investigation showed that leafy greens were the source of this E. coli outbreak. There were 40 reported cases spread between 19 states and 20 hospitalizations that thankfully led to 0 deaths. You can get E. coli from more than just lettuce. It's most commonly known for children getting it from playing in their own feces or from uncooked meat. And recently, I'm sure a couple of you remember that there was a lettuce shortage because lettuce companies were shutting down to do deep cleanings, to redo protocol and stuff on making sure that lettuce was cleaned correctly, being packaged as safely as possible before being sent out to restaurants and grocery stores. Science Daily wrote an article on a possible solution to this problem. Science Daily goes in depth about what I was mentioning earlier about how lettuce comes in contact with multiple harmful bacteria during growing, harvesting, preparation, and retail. And this leads to outbreaks of food poisoning that could potentially be fatal in vulnerable groups such as young children or elderly people. It also talks about how since there is no cooking process to reduce the microbial load in fresh salads, washing is vital by the supplier and the consumer, which is hard because you don't know if your lettuce was cleaned properly when you go to order a salad, which is scary to think about, but it's true. But this new study proposes a new possible solution that uses gentle streams of water carrying sound and microscopic air bubbles to help clean in the cracks and the corners of leafy lettuce. It would take time, which could be a problem potentially, but it would potentially not only reduce food waste, but could reduce food poisoning as well. And this seems to be a very popular solution when I was looking into it, because I was very caught off guard by the idea of water carrying sound and microscopic air bubbles and like how that would work. But there are many, many articles stating that this might be a very viable solution in the future for not only lettuce, but all greens and vegetables that we use and that are being shipped in boxes and handled by multiple people before they are consumed. One activity that I thought would tie into this really well in the classroom would be microorganisms in my lunch. You could have students list a thing, their favorite foods on the board that they like to have in their lunchbox, and as a group investigate these foods and look into them and find all the microorganisms inside. This would be cool in like a science experiment. So you could put them under microscopes, you could sit them out for a couple days and see if anything grows on them. But almost everything that we eat, even if it is prepackaged, has a few microorganisms on them that might not be all good or bad, which is one of the parts of the standard, is finding out the difference between good and harmful microorganisms and what they do for us, and how they can harm us or help us. And the next step to this activity would be to label these microorganisms as good or bad and say what they would do to help us or what they would not do to help us, how they could harm us, and to identify the type of organism, if it's a fungi or if it's bacteria, etc. Lastly, I listed a bunch of lettuce washing tips. I know that recently a bunch of schools have been doing hand washing activities in their lower grades. I think it would be cool to dive in a little bit deeper with your students and focus on using those hand washing tips that they have been pushing so hard due to the pandemic, and take it a step further and to teaching how to properly wash vegetables and fruits to make sure that you are eating healthy and clean produce and that you are not risking any harm to yourself or others.